Chile is a country in western South America. It is the southernmost country in the world and the closest to Antarctica, stretching along a narrow strip of land between the Andes Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. Chile had a population of 19,629,588 million as of 2023 and has a territorial area of 756,102 square kilometers, sharing borders with Peru to the north, Bolivia to the northeast, Argentina to the east and the Drake Passage to the south. The country also controls several Pacific islands, including Juan Fernández, Isla Salas y Gómez, Desventuradas, Easter Island and claims about 1,250,000 square kilometers of Antarctica as the Chilean Antarctic Territory. The capital and largest city of Chile is Santiago and the national language is Spanish. Spain conquered and colonized the region in mid-16th century, replacing Inca rule, but failed to conquer the independent Mapuche people who inhabited what is now south-central Chile. Chile emerged as a relatively stable authoritarian republic in the 1830s after their 1818 declaration of independence from Spain. During the 19th century, Chile experienced significant economic and territorial growth, putting an end to Mapuche resistance in the 1880s and gaining its current northern territory in the War of the Pacific, 1879 to 1883, by defeating Peru and Bolivia. In the 20th century until the 1970s, Chile underwent a process of democratization and experienced rapid population growth and urbanization while relying increasingly on exports from copper mining to support its economy. During the 1960s and 1970s, the country was marked by severe left-right political polarization and turmoil, which culminated in the 1973 Chilean coup d'état that overthrew Salvador Allende's democratically elected left-wing government. This was followed by a 16-year right-wing military dictatorship under Augusto Pinochet, which resulted in more than 3,000 deaths or disappearances. The regime ended in 1990, following a referendum in 1988, and was succeeded by a center-left coalition, which ruled until 2010. Chile is a developing country with a high-income economy and is one of the most economically and socially stable nations in South America. Chile also performs well in the region in terms of sustainability of the state and democratic development. Chile is a founding member of the United Nations, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States and the Pacific Alliance, and joined the OECD in 2010. History. Stone tool evidence indicates humans sporadically frequented the Monte Verde Valley area as long as 18,500 years ago. About 10,000 years ago, migrating indigenous peoples settled in fertile valleys and coastal areas of what is present-day Chile. Settlement sites from very early human habitation include Monte Verde, Cueva del Milodon and the Parliate crater's lava tube. The Incas briefly extended their empire into what is now northern Chile, but the Mapuche, or Araucanians as they were known by the Spaniards, successfully resisted many attempts by the Inca Empire to subjugate them, despite their lack of state organization. They fought against the Sapa Inca Tupac Yupanqui and his army. The result of the bloody three-day confrontation known as the Battle of the Maule was that the Inca conquest of the territories of Chile ended at the Maule River. Spanish colonization. In 1520, while attempting to circumnavigate the globe, Ferdinand Magellan discovered the Southern Passage, now named after him, the Strait of Magellan, thus becoming the first European to set foot on what is now Chile. The next Europeans to reach Chile were Diego de Almagro and his band of Spanish conquistadors, who came from Peru in 1535 seeking gold. The Spanish encountered various cultures that supported themselves principally through slash-and-burn agriculture and hunting. The conquest of Chile began in earnest in 1540 and was carried out by Pedro de Valdivia, one of Francisco Pizarro's lieutenants, who founded the city of Santiago on the 12th of February 1541. Although the Spanish did not find the extensive gold and silver they sought, they recognized the agricultural potential of Chile's Central Valley, and Chile became part of the Spanish Empire. Conquest took place gradually, and the Europeans suffered repeated setbacks. A massive Mapuche insurrection that began in 1553 resulted in Valdivia's death and the destruction of many of the colony's principal settlements. Subsequent major insurrections took place in 1598 and in 1655. Each time the Mapuche and other native groups revolted, the southern border of the colony was driven northward. The abolition of slavery by the Spanish crown in 1683 was done in recognition that enslaving the Mapuche intensified resistance rather than cowing them into submission. Despite royal prohibitions, relations remained strained from continual colonialist interference. Cut off to the north by desert, to the south by the Mapuche, to the east by the Andes Mountains, and to the west by the ocean, Chile became one of the most centralized, homogeneous territories in Spanish America. Serving as a sort of frontier garrison, the colony found itself with the mission of forestalling encroachment by both the Mapuche and Spain's European enemies, especially the English and the Dutch. Buccaneers and pirates menaced the colony in addition to the Mapuche, as was shown by Sir Francis Drake's 1578 raid on Valparaiso, the colony's principal port. Chile hosted one of the largest standing armies in the Americas, making it one of the most militarized of the Spanish possessions, as well as a drain on the treasury of the Viceroyalty of Peru. The first general census was conducted by the government of Agustín de Jauregui between 1777 and 1778. It indicated that the population consisted of 259,646 inhabitants, 73.5% of European descent, 7.9% mestizos, 8.6% indigenous peoples and 9.8% blacks. Francisco Otodo, governor of the province of Chiloe, conducted a census in 1784 and found the population consisted of 26,703 inhabitants, 64.4% of whom were whites and 33.5% of whom were natives. The Diocese of Concepcion conducted a census in areas south of the Maule River in 1812, but did not include the indigenous population or the inhabitants of the province of Chiloe. The population is estimated at 210,567, 86.1% of whom were Spanish or of European descent, 10% of whom were indigenous and 3.7% of whom were mestizos, blacks and mulattoes. A 2021 study by Baton and Lorcajona shows that regions with a relatively high share of North European migrants developed faster in terms of numeracy, even if the overall number of migrants was small. This effect might be related to externalities. The surrounding population adopted a similar behavior as the small non-European immigrant group, and new schools were created. Ironically, there might have been positive spillover effects from the educational investment made by migrants. At the same time, numeracy might have been reduced by the greater inequality in these regions. However, the positive effects of immigration were apparently stronger. Independence and Nation Building. In 1808, Napoleon's enthronement of his brother Joseph as the Spanish king precipitated the drive by Chile for independence from Spain. A national junta in the name of Ferdinand, heir to the deposed king, was formed on the 18th of September 1810. The government junta of Chile proclaimed an autonomous government for Chile within the Spanish monarchy. In memory of this day, Chile celebrates its National Day on the 18th of September each year. After these events, a movement for total independence, under the command of José Miguel Carrera, one of the most renowned patriots, and his two brothers Juan José and Luis Carrera, soon gained a wider following. Spanish attempts to reimpose arbitrary rule during what was called the Reconquista led to a prolonged struggle, including infighting from Bernardo O'Higgins, who challenged Carrera's leadership. Intermittent warfare continued until 1817. With Carrera in prison in Argentina, O'Higgins and anti-Carrera cohort José de San Martín, hero of the Argentine War of Independence, led an army that crossed the Andes into Chile and defeated the Royalists. On the 12th of February 1818, Chile was proclaimed an independent republic. The political revolt brought little social change, however, and 19th-century Chilean society preserved the essence of the stratified colonial social structure, which was greatly influenced by family politics and the Roman Catholic Church. A strong presidency eventually emerged, but wealthy landowners remained powerful. Bernardo O'Higgins once planned to expand Chile by liberating the Philippines from Spain and incorporating the islands. In this regard, he tasked the Scottish naval officer, Lord Thomas Cochrane, in a letter dated the 12th of November 1821, expressing his plan to conquer Guayaquil, the Galapagos Islands, and the Philippines. There were preparations, but the plan did not push through because O'Higgins was exiled. Chile slowly started to expand its influence and to establish its borders. By the Tantorco Treaty, the archipelago of Chiloe was incorporated in 1826. The economy began to boom due to the discovery of silver ore in Chiloe, and the growing trade of the port of Valparaiso, which led to conflict over maritime supremacy in the Pacific with Peru. At the same time, attempts were made to strengthen sovereignty in southern Chile, intensifying penetration into Araucania and colonizing Lanquihue with German immigrants in 1848. Through the founding of Fort Bulnes by the schooner anchored under the command of John Williams Wilson, the Magallanes region started to be controlled by country in 1843, while the Antofagasta region, at the time in dispute with Bolivia, began to fill with people. After the Chilean Civil War of 1829 to 1830, in which the conservatives won, under the Joaquín Prieto administration, the Chilean Constitution of 1833 was written and put into effect with high influence from the triple minister Diego Portales. Two other civil wars happened in Chile in the 1850s, one in 1851 and the other one in 1859. Toward the end of the 19th century, the government in Santiago consolidated its position in the south by the occupation of Araucania. The Boundary Treaty of 1881 between Chile and Argentina confirmed Chilean sovereignty over the Strait of Magellan, but also made the country to renounce to its claims in the rest of East Patagonia after a dispute that started in 1842. As a result of the War of the Pacific with Peru and Bolivia, 1879 to 1883, Chile expanded its territory northward by almost one-third, eliminating Bolivia's access to the Pacific, and acquired valuable nitrate deposits, the exploitation of which led to an era of national affluence. Chile had joined the stand as one of the high-income countries in South America by 1870. On the 9th of September 1888, Chile took possession of Easter Island by the signing of a mutual will agreement with the local king, thanks to the efforts of the Bishop of Tahiti, Monsignor José María Verdia, since the island was constantly attacked by slave merchants. The naval officer Policarpo Toro represented the Chilean government, and Atamu Tequina was the head of the Council of Rapa Nui. The Rapa Nui elders ceded sovereignty, without renouncing their titles as chiefs, the ownership of their lands, the validity of their culture and traditions, and on equal terms. The Rapa Nui sold nothing, they were integrated in equal conditions to Chile. The 1891 Chilean Civil War brought about a redistribution of power between the President and Congress, and Chile established a parliamentary-style democracy. However, the Civil War had also been a contest between those who favored the development of local industries and powerful Chilean banking interests, particularly the House of Edwards, which had strong ties to foreign investors. Soon after, the country engaged in a vastly expensive naval arms race with Argentina that nearly led to war, as well because of the Puna de Atacama dispute. After the War of the Pacific, Chile became a naval power in the Americas, even sending a ship in protests in the Panama Crisis of 1885 against the United States intervention in the then Colombian territory. The United States and Chile had the Baltimore Crisis, which almost became a war as Chile was a potential threat to the intentions of hegemony from the United States in the Western Hemisphere. 20th century. In 1902, Chile and Argentina received the result from the arbitral award of the Andes resolved by the British Crown. In 1903, the Puna de Atacama dispute was solved. In 1904, Chile and Bolivia signed a treaty of peace and friendship which clarified the border between both countries. The Chilean economy partially degenerated into a system protecting the interests of a ruling oligarchy. By the 1920s, the emerging middle and working classes were powerful enough to elect a reformist president, Arturo Alessandri, whose program was frustrated by a conservative Congress. In the 1920s, Marxist groups with strong popular support arose. A military coup led by General Luis Altamirano in 1924 set off a period of political instability that lasted until 1932. Of the 10 governments that held power in that period, the longest lasting was that of General Carlos Ibáñez del Campo, who briefly held power in 1925 and then again between 1927 and 1931 in what was a de facto dictatorship, although not really comparable in harshness or corruption to the type of military dictatorship that have often bedeviled the rest of Latin America. By relinquishing power to a democratically elected successor, Ibáñez del Campo retained the respect of a large enough segment of the population to remain a viable politician for more than 30 years, in spite of the vague and shifting nature of his ideology. When constitutional rule was restored in 1932, a strong middle-class party, the Radicals, emerged. It became the key force in coalition government for the next 20 years. During the period of Radical Party dominance, 1932 to 52, the state increased its role in the economy. In 1952, voters returned Ibáñez del Campo to office for another 6 years. Jorge Alessandri succeeded Ibáñez del Campo in 1958, bringing Chilean conservatism back into power democratically for another term. The 1964 presidential election of Christian Democrat Eduardo Frei Monalva by an absolute majority initiated a period of major reform. Under the slogan, Revolution in Liberty, the Frei administration embarked on far-reaching social and economic programs, particularly in education, housing, and agrarian reform, including rural unionization of agricultural workers. By 1967, however, Frei encountered increasing opposition from leftists, who charged that his reforms were inadequate, and from conservatives, who found them excessive. At the end of his term, Frei had not fully achieved his party's ambitious goals. In the 1970 election, Senator Salvador Allende of the Socialist Party of Chile, then part of the Popular Unity Coalition, which included the Communists, Radicals, Social Democrats, Dissident Christian Democrats, the Popular Unitary Action Movement, and the Independent Popular Action, achieved a partial majority in a plurality of votes in a three-way contest, followed by candidates Radomiro Tomic for the Christian Democrat Party and Jorge Alessandri for the Conservative Party. Allende was not elected with an absolute majority, receiving fewer than 35% of the votes. The Chilean Congress conducted a runoff vote between the leading candidates, Allende and former President Jorge Alessandri, and, keeping with tradition, chose Allende by a vote of 153 to 35. Frei refused to form an alliance with Alessandri to oppose Allende, on the grounds that the Christian Democrats were a workers' party and could not make common cause with the right wing. An economic depression that began in 1972 was exacerbated by capital flight, plummeting private investment, and withdrawal of bank deposits in response to Allende's socialist program. Production fell and unemployment rose. Allende adopted measures including price freezes, wage increases, and tax reforms, to increase consumer spending and redistribute income downward. Joint public-private works projects helped reduce unemployment. Much of the banking sector was nationalized. Many enterprises within the copper, coal, iron, nitrate, and steel industries were expropriated, nationalized, or subjected to state intervention. Industrial output increased sharply and unemployment fell during the Allende administration's first year. Allende's program included advancement of workers' interests, replacing the judicial system with socialist legality, nationalization of banks and forcing others to bankruptcy, and strengthening popular militias, known as MIR. Started under former President Frei, the Popular Unity Platform also called for nationalization of Chile's major copper mines in the form of a constitutional amendment. The measure was passed unanimously by Congress. As a result, the Richard Nixon administration organized and inserted secret operatives in Chile, in order to swiftly destabilize Allende's government. In addition, U.S. financial pressure restricted international economic credit to Chile. The economic problems were also exacerbated by Allende's public spending, financed mostly through printing money, and by poor credit ratings given by commercial banks. Simultaneously, opposition media, politicians, business guilds and other organizations helped to accelerate a campaign of domestic political and economical destabilization, some of which was backed by the United States. By early 1973, inflation was out of control. On the 26th of May 1973, Chile's Supreme Court, which was opposed to Allende's government, unanimously denounced Allende's disruption of the legality of the nation. Although illegal under the Chilean constitution, the court supported and strengthened Pinochet's soon-to-be seizure of power. A military coup overthrew Allende on the 11th of September 1973. As the armed forces bombarded the presidential palace, Allende apparently committed suicide. After the coup, Henry Kissinger told U.S. President Richard Nixon that the United States had helped the coup. In 1970, when Allende was first elected, Henry Kissinger had stated, "I don't see why we need to stand by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its own people." A military junta, led by General Augusto Pinochet, took control of the country. The years of the regime were marked by human rights violations. Chile actively participated in Operation Condor. In October 1973, at least 72 people were murdered by the Caravan of Death. According to the Rettig Report and Valak Commission, at least 2,115 were killed and at least 27,265. In 2011, Chile recognized an additional 9,800 victims, bringing the total number of killed, tortured or imprisoned for political reasons to 40,018. At the National Stadium, filled with detainees, one of those tortured and killed was internationally known poet-singer Victor Jara. A new constitution was approved by a controversial plebiscite on the 11th of September 1980, and General Pinochet became president of the republic for an 8-year term. After Pinochet obtained rule of the country, several hundred committed Chilean revolutionaries joined the Sandinista army in Nicaragua, guerrilla forces in Argentina, or training camps in Cuba, Eastern Europe, and Northern Africa. In the late 1980s, largely as a result of events such as the 1982 economic collapse and mass civil resistance in 1983 to 1988, the government gradually permitted greater freedom of assembly, speech, and association, to include trade union and political activity. The government launched market-oriented reforms with Hernan Bucci as Minister of Finance. Chile moved toward a free market economy that saw an increase in domestic and foreign private investment, although the copper industry and other important mineral resources were not open to competition. In a plebiscite on the 5th of October 1988, Pinochet was denied a second 8-year term as president, 56% against 44%. Chileans elected a new president and the majority of members of a bicameral Congress on the 14th of December 1989. Christian Democrat Patricio Aylwin, the candidate of a coalition of 17 political parties called the Concertation, received an absolute majority of votes, 55%. President Aylwin served from 1990 to 1994, in what was considered a transition period. 21st century. In December 1993, Christian Democrat Eduardo Frei Ruiz-Tagle, the son of previous President Eduardo Frei Montalva, led the Concertation coalition to victory with an absolute majority of votes, 58%. Frei Ruiz-Tagle was succeeded in 2000 by socialist Ricardo Lagos, who won the presidency in an unprecedented runoff election against Joaquin Lavín of the Rightist Alliance for Chile. In January 2006, Chileans elected their first female president, Michelle Bachelet Giria, of the Socialist Party, defeating Sebastián Pinera, of the National Renewal Party, extending the Concertation governance for another 4 years. In January 2010, Chileans elected Sebastián Pinera as the first rightist president in 20 years, defeating former President Eduardo Frei Ruiz-Tagle of the Concertation, for a 4-year term succeeding Bachelet. Due to term limits, Sebastián Pinera did not stand for re-election in 2013, and his term expired in March 2014, resulting in Michelle Bachelet returning to office. Sebastián Pinera succeeded Bachelet again in 2018 as the President of Chile after winning the December 2017 presidential election. On the 27th of February 2010, Chile was struck by an 8.8 MW earthquake, the 5th largest ever recorded at the time. More than 500 people died, most from the ensuing tsunami, and over 1 million people lost their homes. The earthquake was also followed by multiple aftershocks. Initial damage estimates were in the range of 15 to 30 billion US dollars, around 10% to 15% of Chile's real gross domestic product. Chile achieved global recognition for the successful rescue of 33 trapped miners in 2010. On the 5th of August 2010, the access tunnel collapsed at the San Jose copper and gold mine in the Atacama Desert near Copiapo in northern Chile, trapping 33 men 700 meters below ground. A rescue effort organized by the Chilean government located the miners 17 days later. All 33 men were brought to the surface 2 months later on the 13th of October 2010 over a period of almost 24 hours, an effort that was carried on live television around the world. 2019 to 2020 Chilean protests are a series of countrywide protests in response to a rise in the Santiago Metro subway fare, the increased cost of living, privatization, and inequality prevalent in the country. On the 15th of November, most of the political parties represented in the National Congress signed an agreement to call a national referendum in April 2020 regarding the creation of a new constitution, later postponed to October due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On the 25th of October 2020, Chileans voted 78.28% in favor of a new constitution, while 21.72% rejected the change. Voter turnout was 51%. An election for the members of the Constitutional Convention was held in Chile between the 15th and the 16th of May 2021. On the 19th of December 2021, a leftist candidate, the 35-year-old former student protest leader Gabriel Boric, won Chile's presidential election to become the country's youngest ever leader. On the 11th of March 2022, Boric was sworn in as president to succeed outgoing President Sebastián Piñera. Out of 24 members of Gabriel Boric's female-majority cabinet, 14 are women. On the 4th of September 2022, voters rejected the new constitution proposal in the constitutional referendum, which was put forward by the left-leaning Constitutional Convention. On the 17th of December 2023, voters rejected a second new constitution proposal in a new constitutional referendum, written by the conservative-led Constitutional Council. Geography. A long and narrow coastal southern cone country on the west side of the Andes Mountains, Chile stretches over 4,300 kilometers north to south, but only 350 kilometers at its widest point east to west and 64 kilometers at its narrowest point east to west, with an average width of 175 kilometers. This encompasses a remarkable variety of climates and landscapes. It contains 756,950 square kilometers of land area. It is situated within the Pacific Ring of Fire. Excluding its Pacific Islands and Antarctic plain, Chile lies between latitude 17 degrees and 56 degrees south, and longitude 66 degrees and 75 degrees west. Chile is among the longest north-south countries in the world. If one considers only mainland territory, Chile is unique within this group in its narrowness from east to west, with the other long north-south countries, including Brazil, Russia, Canada, and the United States, among others, all being wider from east to west by a factor of more than 10. Chile also claims 1,250,000 kilometers square of Antarctica as part of its territory, Chilean Antarctic Territory. However, this latter claim is suspended under the terms of the Antarctic Treaty, of which Chile is a signatory. It is the world's southernmost country that is geographically on the mainland. Chile controls Easter Island and São y Gomez Island, the easternmost islands of Polynesia, which it incorporated to its territory in 1888, and the Juan Fernandez Islands, more than 600 kilometers from the mainland. Also controlled, but only temporarily inhabited, by some local fishermen, are the small islands of San Ambrosio and San Felix. These islands are notable because they extend Chile's claim to territorial waters out from its coast into the Pacific Ocean. The northern Atacama Desert contains great mineral wealth, primarily copper and nitrates. The relatively small Central Valley, which includes Santiago, dominates the country in terms of population and agricultural resources. This area is also the historical center from which Chile expanded in the late 19th century when it integrated the northern and southern regions. Southern Chile is rich in forests, grazing lands, and features a string of volcanoes and lakes. The southern coast is a labyrinth of fjords, inlets, canals, twisting peninsulas, and islands. The Andes Mountains are located on the eastern border. Chile is located along a highly seismic and volcanic zone, part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, due to the subduction of the Nazca and Antarctic plates in the South American plate. Biodiversity. The flora and fauna of Chile are characterized by a high degree of endemism, due to its particular geography. In continental Chile, the Atacama Desert in the north and the Andes Mountains to the east are barriers that have led to the isolation of flora and fauna. Add to that the enormous length of Chile, over 4,300 kilometers, and this results in a wide range of climates and environments that can be divided into three general zones: the desert provinces of the north, central Chile, and the humid regions of the south. The native flora of Chile consists of relatively fewer species compared to the flora of other South American countries. The northernmost coastal and central region is largely barren of vegetation, approaching the most absolute desert in the world, 100, on the slopes of the Andes. In addition to the scattered tola desert brush, grasses are found. The Central Valley is characterized by several species of cacti, the hardy espinos, the Chilean pine, the southern beeches and the copperhue, a red bell-shaped flower that is Chile's national flower. In southern Chile, south of the Biobío River, heavy precipitation has produced dense forests of laurels, magnolias, and various species of conifers and beeches, which become smaller and more stunted to the south. 101. The cold temperatures and winds of the extreme south preclude heavy forestation. Grassland is found in East Mogollón province and northern Tierra del Fuego, in Patagonia. Much of the Chilean flora is distinct from that of neighboring Argentina, indicating that the Andean barrier existed during its formation. Some of Chile's flora has an Antarctic origin due to land bridges which formed during the Cretaceous ice ages, allowing plants to migrate from Antarctica to South America. Chile had a 2018 Forest Landscape Integrity Index mean score of 7.37/10, ranking it 43rd globally out of 172 countries. Just over 3,000 species of fungi are recorded in Chile, but this number is far from complete. The true total number of fungal species occurring in Chile is likely to be far higher, given the generally accepted estimate that only about 7% of all fungi worldwide have so far been discovered. Although the amount of available information is still very small, a first effort has been made to estimate the number of fungal species endemic to Chile, and 1995 species have been tentatively identified as possible endemics of the country. Chile's geographical isolation has restricted the immigration of faunal life so that only a few of the many distinctive South American animals are found. Among the larger mammals are the puma or cougar, the llama-like guanaco and the fox-like chilla. In the forest region, several types of marsupials and a small deer known as the pudu are found. There are many species of small birds, but most of the larger common Latin American types are absent. Few freshwater fish are native, but North American trout have been successfully introduced into the Andean lakes. Owing to the vicinity of the Humboldt Current, ocean waters abound with fish and other forms of marine life, which in turn support a rich variety of waterfowl, including several penguins. Whales are abundant, and some 6 species of seals are found in the area. National symbols. The national flower is the copperhue, Lapageria rosea, Chilean bellflower, which grows in the woods of southern Chile. The coat of arms depicts the 2 national animals, the condor, Vultogryphus, a very large bird that lives in the mountains, and the huemul, Hippocamelus bisulcus, an endangered white-tailed deer. It also has the legend por la razón o la fuerza, by reason or by force. The flag of Chile consists of 2 equal horizontal bands of white, top, and red. There is a blue square the same height as the white band at the hoist side end of the white band. The square bears a white 5-point star in the center representing a guide to progress and honor. Blue symbolizes the sky, white is for the snow-covered Andes, and red stands for the blood spilled to achieve independence. The flag of Chile is similar to the flag of Texas, although the Chilean flag is 21 years older. However, like the Texan flag, the flag of Chile is modeled after the flag of the United States. Economy. The Central Bank of Chile in Santiago serves as the central bank for the country. The Chilean currency is the Chilean peso. Chile is one of South America's most stable and prosperous nations, leading Latin American nations in human development, competitiveness, globalization, economic freedom, and low perception of corruption. Since July 2013, Chile is considered by the World Bank as a high-income economy. The think tank The Heritage Foundation states that Chile has the highest degree of economic freedom in South America, ranking 22nd worldwide, owing to its independent and efficient judicial system and prudent public finance management. In May 2010, Chile became the first South American country to join the OECD. In 2006, Chile became the country with the highest nominal GDP per capita in Latin America. As of 2020, Chile ranks 3rd in Latin America, behind Uruguay and Panama, in nominal GDP per capita. Copper mining makes up 20% of Chilean GDP and 60% of exports. Escondida is the largest copper mine in the world, producing over 5% of global supplies. Overall, Chile produces a third of the world's copper. Codelco, the state mining firm, competes with private copper mining companies. Mineral resources. Chile is rich in mineral resources, especially copper and lithium. It is thought that due to the importance of lithium for batteries for electric vehicles and stabilization of electric grids with large proportions of intermittent renewables in the electricity mix, Chile could be strengthened geopolitically. However, this perspective has also been criticized for underestimating the power of economic incentives for expanded production in other parts of the world. The country was, in 2019, the world's largest producer of copper, iodine, and rhenium, the second largest producer of lithium and molybdenum, the sixth largest producer of silver, the seventh largest producer of salt, the eighth largest producer of potash, the 13th producer of sulfur, and the 13th producer of iron ore in the world. The country also has considerable gold production. Between 2006 and 2017, the country produced annual amounts ranging from 35.9 tons in 2017 to 51.3 tons in 2013. Agriculture. Agriculture in Chile encompasses a wide range of different activities due to its particular geography, climate and geology and human factors. Historically, agriculture is one of the bases of Chile's economy. Now agriculture and allied sectors like forestry, logging and fishing account for only 4.9% of the GDP as of 2007 and employ 13.6% of the country's labor force. Chile is one of the 5 largest world producers of cherry and blueberry, and one of the 10 largest world producers of grape, apple, kiwi, peach, plum and hazelnut, focusing on exporting high-value fruits. Some other major agriculture products of Chile include pears, onions, wheat, maize, oats, garlic, asparagus, beans, beef, poultry, wool, fish, timber, and hemp. Due to its geographical isolation and strict customs policies, Chile is free from diseases and pests such as mad cow disease, fruit fly and phylloxera. Its location in the southern hemisphere, which has quite different harvesting times from the northern hemisphere, and its wide range of agriculture conditions are considered Chile's main comparative advantages. However, Chile's mountainous landscape limits the extent and intensity of agriculture so that arable land corresponds only to 2.62% of the total territory. Chile currently utilizes 14,015 hectares of agricultural land. Chile is the world's second largest producer of salmon, after Norway. In 2019, it was responsible for 26% of the global supply. In wine, Chile is usually among the 10 largest producers in the world. In 2018, it was in 6th place. Tourism. Tourism in Chile has experienced sustained growth over the last few decades. In 2005, tourism grew by 13.6%, generating more than $4.5 billion, of which $1.5 billion was attributed to foreign tourists. According to the National Service of Tourism, 2 million people a year visit the country. Most of these visitors come from other countries in the American continent, mainly Argentina, followed by a growing number from the United States, Europe, and Brazil, with a growing number of Asians from South Korea and China. The main attractions for tourists are places of natural beauty situated in the extreme zones of the country. San Pedro de Atacama, in the north, is very popular with foreign tourists who arrive to admire the Incaic architecture, the Altiplano lakes, and the Valley of the Moon. In Puta, also in the north, there is the Chungara Lake, as well as the Parinacota and the Pomerade volcanoes, with altitudes of 6,348 m and 6,282 m, respectively. Throughout the central Andes there are many ski resorts of international repute, including Portillo, Vail Nevado, and Termas de Chillán. The main tourist sites in the south are national parks. The most popular is Canguillo National Park in the Araucanía, and the coastal area around Tirúa and Canet, with the Isla Mocha and the Nahuelbuta National Park, Chiloe Archipelago, and Patagonia, which includes Laguna San Rafael National Park, with its many glacier, and the Torres del Paine National Park. The central port city of Valparaiso, which is World Heritage with its unique architecture, is also popular. Finally, Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean is one of the main Chilean tourist destinations. For locals, tourism is concentrated mostly in the summer, December to March, and mainly in the coastal beach towns. Arica, Iquique, Antofagasta, La Serena, and Coquimbo are the main summer centers in the north. Pucon on the shores of Lake Villaririca is the main center in the south. Because of its proximity to Santiago, the coast of Valparaiso region with many beach resorts receives the largest number of tourists. Vina del Mar, Valparaiso's more affluent northern neighbor, is popular because of its beaches, casino, and annual song festival, the most important musical event in Latin America. Pichilemu in the O'Higgins region is widely known as South America's best surfing spot, according to Fodors. In November 2005, the government launched a campaign under the brand Chile, Always Surprising, intended to promote the country internationally for both business and tourism. Museums in Chile such as the Chilean National Museum of Fine Arts, built in 1880, feature works by Chilean artists. Chile is home to the world-renowned Patagonian Trail that resides on the border between Argentina and Chile. Chile recently launched a massive scenic route for tourism in hopes of encouraging development based on conservation. The route of parks covers 1,740 miles, 2,800 kilometers, and was designed by Tompkin Conservation, founders Douglas Tompkins and wife Christine. Transport. Due to Chile's topography, a functioning transport network is vital to its economy. In 2020, Chile had 85,984 kilometers of highways, with 21,289 kilometers paved. In the same year, the country had 3,347 kilometers of duplicated highways, the second largest network in South America, after Brazil. Since the mid-1990s, there has been a significant improvement in the country's roads, through bidding processes that allowed the construction of an efficient road network, with emphasis on the duplication of continuous 1,950 kilometers of the Pan-American Highway, Chile Route 5, between Puerto Montt and Caldera, in addition to the planned duplication in the Atacama Desert area, the excerpts in between Santiago, Valparaiso, and the Central Coast, and the northern access to Concepcion and the large project of the Santiago Urban Highways Network, opened between 2004 and 2006. Buses are now the main means of long-distance transportation in Chile, following the decline of its railway network. The bus system covers the entire country, from Arica to Santiago, a 30-hour journey, and from Santiago to Punta Arenas, about 40 hours, with a change at Osorno. Chile has a total of 372 runways, 62 paved and 310 unpaved. Important airports in Chile include Chacaluta International Airport, Arica, Diego Aracena International Airport, Iquique, Andrés Sabella Galvez International Airport, Antofagasta, Pariolsa International Airport, Concepcion, El Tepual International Airport, Puerto Montt, President Carlos Ibáñez del Campo International Airport, Punta Arenas, La Araucanía International Airport, Temuco, Mataveri International Airport, Easter Island, the most remote airport in the world, as defined by distance to another airport, and the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport, Santiago, with a traffic of 12,105,524 passengers in 2011. Santiago is headquarters of Latin America's largest airline holding company and Chilean flag carrier LATAM Airlines. Demographics. Chile's 2017 census reported a population of 17,574,003. Its rate of population growth has been decreasing since 1990, due to a declining birth rate. By 2050, the population is expected to reach approximately 20.2 million people. Ancestry and ethnicity. Mexican professor Francisco Lizcano of National Autonomous University of Mexico estimated that 52.7% of Chileans were white, 39.3% were mestizo, and 8% were Amerindian. In 1984, a study called Sociogenetic Reference Framework for Public Health Studies in Chile from the Revista de Pediatría de Chile determined an ancestry of 67.9% European and 32.1% Native American. In 1994, a biological study determined that the Chilean composition was 64% European and 35% Amerindian. The recent study in the Candela project establishes that the genetic composition of Chile is 52% of European origin, with 44% of the genome coming from Native Americans, Amerindians, and 4% coming from Africa, making Chile a primarily mestizo country with traces of African descent present in half of the population. Another genetic study conducted by University of Brasilia in several South American countries shows a similar genetic composition for Chile, with a European contribution of 51.6%, Amerindian contribution of 42.1%, and African contribution of 6.3%. In 2015, another study established genetic composition in 57% European, 38% Native American, and 2.5% African. A public health booklet from the University of Chile states that 35% of the population is of Caucasian origin, predominantly white. Mestizos are estimated to amount to a total of 65%, while Native Americans, Amerindians, comprise the remaining 5%. Despite the genetic considerations, many Chileans, if asked, would self-identify as white. The 2011 Latinobarometro survey asked respondents in Chile what race they considered themselves belong to. Most answered white, 59%, while 25% said mestizo, and 8% self-classified as indigenous. A 2002 national poll revealed that a majority of Chileans believed they possessed 43.4% or 8.3% indigenous blood, while 40.3% responded that they had none. Chile is one of 22 countries to have signed and ratified the only binding international law concerning indigenous peoples, the Indigenous and Tribal Peoples Convention, 1989. It was adopted in 1989 as the International Labour Organization, Convention 169. Chile ratified it in 2008. A Chilean court decision in November 2009, considered to be a landmark ruling on indigenous rights, made use of the convention. The Supreme Court decision on Aymara water rights upheld rulings by both the Pozo Almonte Tribunal and the Iquique Court of Appeals, and marks the first judicial application of ILO Convention 169 in Chile. The earliest European immigrants were Spanish colonizers who arrived in the 16th century. The Amerindian population of central Chile was absorbed into the Spanish settler population in the beginning of the colonial period to form the large mestizo population that exists in Chile today. Mestizos create modern middle and lower classes. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many Basques came to Chile, where they integrated into the existing elites of Castilian origin. Post-colonial Chile was never a particularly attractive destination for migrants, owing to its remoteness and distance from Europe. Europeans preferred to stay in countries closer to their homelands instead of taking the long journey through the Straits of Magellan or crossing the Andes. European migration did not result in a significant change in the ethnic composition of Chile, except in the region of Magellan. Spaniards were the only major European migrant group to Chile, and there was never large-scale immigration such as that to Argentina or Brazil. Between 1851 and 1924, Chile only received 0.5% of European immigration to Latin America, compared to 46% to Argentina, 33% to Brazil, 14% to Cuba, and 4% to Uruguay. However, it is undeniable that immigrants have played a significant role in Chilean society. Immigrants to Chile during 19th and 20th centuries came from France, Great Britain, Germany, and Croatia. Descendants of different European ethnic groups often intermarried in Chile. This intermarriage and mixture of cultures and races shaped the present society and culture of the Chilean middle and upper classes. Also, roughly 500,000 of Chile's population is full or partial Palestinian origin and 800,000 Arab descents. Chile currently has 1.5 million of Latin American immigrants, mainly from Venezuela, Peru, Haiti, Colombia, Bolivia, and Argentina, 8% of the total population in 2019, without counting descendants. According to the 2002 national census, Chile's foreign-born population has increased by 75% since 1992. As of November 2021, numbers of people entering Chile from elsewhere in Latin America have grown swiftly in the last decade, tripling in the last 3 years to 1.5 million, with arrivals stemming from humanitarian crises in Haiti, 180,000, and Venezuela, 460,000. Religion. Historically, the indigenous peoples in Chile observed a variety of religions before the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. During Spanish rule and the first century of Chilean independence, the Catholic Church was one of the most powerful institutions in the country. In the late 19th century, liberal policies, the so-called leyes laicas or lay laws, started to reduce the influence of the clergy, and the promulgation of a new constitution in 1925 established the separation of church and state. As of 2012, 66.6% of Chilean population over 15 years of age claimed to adhere to the Roman Catholic Church, a decrease from the 70% reported in the 2002 census. In the same census of 2012, 17% of Chileans reported adherence to an evangelical church. Evangelical, in the census, referred to all Christian denominations other than the Roman Catholic and Orthodox, Greek, Persian, Serbian, Ukrainian, and Armenian churches, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Seventh-day Adventists, and Jehovah's Witnesses, essentially, those denominations generally still termed Protestant in most English-speaking lands, although Adventism is often considered an evangelical denomination as well. Approximately 90% of evangelical Christians are Pentecostal. But Wesleyan, Lutheran, Anglican, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, other Reformed, Baptist, and Methodist churches also are present amongst Chilean evangelical churches. Irreligious people, atheists, and agnostics account for around 12% of the population. By 2015, the major religion in Chile remained Christianity, 68%, with an estimated 55% of Chileans belonging to the Roman Catholic Church, 13% to various evangelical churches, and just 7% adhering to any other religion. Agnostics and atheists were estimated at 25% of the population. Chile has a Bahá'í religious community, and is home to the Bahá'í Mother Temple, or Continental House of Worship, for Latin America. Completed in 2016, it serves as a space for people of all religions and backgrounds to gather, meditate, reflect, and worship. It is formed from cast glass and translucent marble and has been described as innovative in its architectural style. The Constitution guarantees the right to freedom of religion, and other laws and policies contribute to generally free religious practice. The law at all levels fully protects this right against abuse by either governmental or private actors. Church and state are officially separate in Chile. A 1999 law on religion prohibits religious discrimination. However, the Roman Catholic Church, for mostly historical and social reasons, enjoys a privileged status and occasionally receives preferential treatment. Government officials attend Roman Catholic events as well as major evangelical and Jewish ceremonies. The Chilean government treats the religious holidays of Christmas, Good Friday, the Feast of the Virgin of Carmen, the Feast of Saints Peter and Paul, the Feast of the Assumption, All Saints' Day, and the Feast of the Immaculate Conception as national holidays. Recently, the government declared the 31st of October, Reformation Day, to be an additional national holiday, in honor of the evangelical churches of the country. The patron saints of Chile are Our Lady of Mount Carmel and St. James the Greater, Santiago. In 2005, Pope Benedict XVI canonized Alberto Otodo, who became the country's second native Roman Catholic saint after Teresa de los Andes. Languages. The Spanish spoken in Chile is distinctively accented and quite unlike that of neighboring South American countries because final syllables are often dropped, and some consonants have a soft pronunciation. Accent varies only very slightly from north to south. More noticeable are the differences in accent based on social class or whether one lives in the city or the country. That the Chilean population was largely formed in a small section at the center of the country and then migrated in modest numbers to the north and south helps explain this relative lack of differentiation, which was maintained by the national reach of radio, and now television, which also helps to diffuse and homogenize colloquial expressions. There are several indigenous languages spoken in Chile: Mapudungun, Aymara, Rapa Nui, Chilean Sign Language, and, barely surviving, Kawasca and Yagan, along with non-indigenous German, Italian, English, Greek, and Quechua. After the Spanish conquest, Spanish took over as the lingua franca, and the indigenous languages have become minority languages, with some now extinct or close to extinction. German is still spoken to some extent in southern Chile, either in small countryside pockets or as a second language among the communities of larger cities. Through initiatives such as the English Opens Doors program, the government made English mandatory for students in 5th grade and above in public schools. Most private schools in Chile start teaching English from kindergarten. Common English words have been absorbed and appropriated into everyday Spanish speech. Education. In Chile, education begins with preschool until the age of 5. Primary school is provided for children between ages 6 and 13. Students then attend secondary school until graduation at age 17. Secondary education is divided into 2 parts. During the first 2 years, students receive a general education. Then, they choose a branch: scientific humanistic education, artistic education, or technical and professional education. Secondary school ends 2 years later on the acquirement of a certificate, Licencia de Enseñanza Media. Chilean education is segregated by wealth in a 3-tiered system. The quality of the schools reflects socio-economic backgrounds. City schools, colegios municipals, that are mostly free and have the worst education results, mostly attended by poor students. Subsidized schools that receive some money from the government which can be supplemented by fees paid by the student's family, which are attended by mid-income students and typically get mid-level results, and entirely private schools that consistently get the best results. Many private schools charge attendance fees of 0.5 to 1 median household income. Upon successful graduation of secondary school, students may continue into higher education. The higher education schools in Chile consist of Chilean traditional universities and are divided into public universities or private universities. There are medical schools, and both the Universidad de Chile and Universidad Diego Portales offer law schools in a partnership with Yale University. Culture. From the period between early agricultural settlements and up to the late pre-Columbian period, northern Chile was a region of Andean culture that was influenced by Altiplano traditions spreading to the coastal valleys of the north, while southern regions were areas of Mapuche cultural activities. Throughout the colonial period following the conquest, and during the early Republican period, the country's culture was dominated by the Spanish. Other European influences, primarily English, French, and German, began in the 19th century and have continued to this day. German migrants influenced the Bavarian-style rural architecture and cuisine in the south of Chile in cities such as Valdivia, Frutillar, Puerto Varas, Osorno, Temuco, Puerto Octe, Lanquihue, Faja Maisan, Petrufcan, Victoria, Pucon, and Puerto Montt.